All right, collection update time. A lot of people have asked about this because the previous one is quite a while ago. I don't generally enjoy making this kind of video because I don't want to come across as bragging, as if I'm going, oh, look at all my shit. It's couldn't be further from the truth. But I understand that people find it interesting to see what's there right now, what's gone. By the way, if you're wondering how I can afford all this, I'm actually going to talk about that in the next video. Also, if you're wondering about specific things that you may have seen in other videos, why they aren't here, well, for one, I limited this video to just the historical stuff. I have some other things like, for example, the Zombie Tools Reaver Cleaver and this sword here that one of my subscribers made for me. And these are fantasy, and I mean, frankly, this is mainly an excuse to leave out a few things because this has been pretty difficult to fit everything in frame, which I wanted to. In fact, there's one thing, the crossbow isn't even in frame, but I just wanted to have everything together, and it was convenient to leave those out. And the other reason why a few things don't show up is, well, they're gone. You know, if you just look at all the review and testing videos, you may imagine that I have an entire room just stuffed full of things, but you know, things come and go. Sometimes I review something and then either I have to send it back, or sometimes I don't want to or cannot keep it, so I have to sell it to, you know, invest into something new, or sometimes just to pay bills. That happens too, of course. Not that often, fortunately. But yeah, so things get cycled through and whatnot, but these here are basically the keepers. So that's why I wanted to put them in this video, because I'm fairly confident that these will stay, but you know, we'll see. Anyway, so I'm not going to talk about the Albion swords over here and there as well, because I talked about them specifically in another video, which I'm going to link in the video description down below. But yeah, let's go maybe left to right. So here is the Hanwei Pudao. This one is Kara's, by the way, just like the Dao over there and the long khukuri, and also this Filipino sword there. So this is a really neat pole arm. I generally quite like pole arms. It's just difficult to find good ones on the market. This, you know, is overall a really neat design. It looks great and everything. My problem with it is they messed up the steel. Unfortunately, the steel is very soft. The point is bent at one point. I had to straighten it back out. The point has bent at one point. Sometimes Mima formulation. Anyway, derp. So, and also that this thing is ridiculously flexible. You can, I don't know if they were intended to be this way. I don't know enough about Chinese weapons, but it bothers me a little bit because it does affect both cutting and thrusting. But it's still a nice one. So there's that. Then next to it, we've got another pole arm. So here is the Hungarian axe by Arms and Armor. I don't have to say too much about it. I think it has appeared in a number of videos. One thing I should probably point out is that this is actually not upside down. Some people occasionally think, wait a moment, isn't this the wrong way? No, that's correct. You can poke people with it. So this is actually, and this is something that I very much like about it, is that you can in fact thrust effectively with it. You can also thrust with the Dane axe over there, but you know, the more upswept blade you have, the more effective it is, of course. You've probably seen this one here in tests. So that is also made by traditional Filipino weapons, just like these over here. This is the Panabas, or however it's pronounced. I say that every time. Whatever. So very interesting blade. This recurve here is really neat, and this one cuts very well. I didn't expect that at first because of how light it is. I mean, this is ludicrously light, almost way lighter than I would have expected. But it performs well, so that's really what matters. So carefully put that back. I've got an archery target here that I stuck all of these in to make sure that they don't fall over and then cause this cascade of steel that wrecks everything. That sounds kind of badass, actually. Somebody make a metal album named Cascade of Steel, if it isn't already out. That's pretty metal. Anyway, so yeah, here is the Espada y daga. I made a review of that. I'll post that in the video description as well. So pretty neat, this combination. As far as I know, I'll take this with a grain of salt because I don't know a whole lot about the history of the Philippines, but as far as I know, they developed these in response to the Spanish rapier and dagger. So this is basically the locals' take on it, which, yeah, makes certain sense. And yeah, these perform really well, cut nicely, look good. I like this, you know, this kind of hook here at the end. So that really makes sure that it stays in your hand. These are used noticeably differently than European swords, by the way. At some point it would be interesting to pick up some Kali techniques to use them more appropriately. Just from what I've seen so far, from seeing Kali practitioners use them, apparently they tend to strike, you know, from the back like this and then follow all the way through and bring it back to the other side, and they also tend to keep the other hand here, you know, to be used for, you know, grappling and blocking the other person's arm or blade, which is, you know, it's a more close quarters approach. Anyway, I shouldn't talk too much about something that I don't know a whole lot about. And then we've got the Raven Armoury Gladius. This is I think out of all of these, this is the oldest one. This has been with me for the longest time. I got this in 2003 or 4, something like that. And this was apparently made in the mid-90s. So interestingly enough, I got this on eBay way back. And then I eventually found out that this is from Raven Armoury, and I contacted them and you know, sent them a picture and, hey, can you tell me what this is? Or when this was made, and then they told me that, yeah, it's mid-90s, so that's quite a while ago. Really nice Gladius, definitely a keeper. There's something about this tapered shape here that is really appealing. This is also one of the cases where I can forgive the round handle. I would prefer if it was oval, but you know, for thrusts, it really doesn't matter. And the way it kind of locks into your hand is really nice. I have cut with it pretty effectively, so you can do it. I mean, it's not necessary to have an oval or rounded rectangular grip, it just helps. So there is that. Then this one here, I don't think I've shown in a video yet. I got that recently from Cult of Athena. And this is a Ginunting, which is one of the more well-known blades from the Philippines. Really neat. I immediately, as soon as I took that out of the box, I liked it. The nice thing about this forward curvature is that it really drives the blade into the target. And also, this is one of the few designs that really make tip cuts pretty effective. Like with a straight blade, a tip cut isn't terribly good. I know some people disagree on that, but the problem basically is that if you only get this much penetration, it's just like in a historical duel or battle, it just wouldn't cause enough of an injury, especially if they wear padding of any sort. It just doesn't go deep enough, basically. But this, because it is forward curved, you can definitely drive this in and make sure that more of the blade enters. So yeah, and also again, a very nice handle, quite like it. So this one, even though I haven't actually tested it yet, has already made it into the keeper category. So that tells you something about how nicely designed it is. So you go back in there without toppling everything over. Then we've got this Ewart Park bronze sword. This is made by Neil Burridge in the UK. And really neat. Something very pretty about bronze. I've shown that in other videos as well. I'm not going to talk too much about it in this one. The large pommel is Not quite my thing. I mean, most likely it serves a purpose. This kind of pommel usually makes it so that you're naturally favoring more of a draw cut, more of kind of close quarters. So somewhat similar to the Filipino ones actually in that regard. And of course, thrusting also works with this. And yeah, it's a very pretty sword. It's well made, and certainly glad to have it in the collection. Just like the other bronze sword there. This is the khopesh. So that's an Egyptian sword, sickle sword. This one is in a little bit rough shape. During one test, the entire blade twisted a little bit. I highly doubt you can see that in the video, but it's there. And also I had to repair the edge afterwards. It's a little bit wavy now. So of course bronze isn't as hard or tough as steel, even though it's a lot better than many people seem to think, especially if the edges are forged and hardened. So it's still a pretty decent weapon, no doubt about it. And of course it preserves better than steel, which is always a bonus for archaeologists. And yeah, really quite a nice one. And we've got the Knecht over there. Again, I've talked about that in the other video. We've got this Italian mace here by Windlass. I've used that quite a bit in armor tests recently. Some of you may have noticed that it's a little bent. Still works fine, but it was during the abusive testing I did to figure out just how sturdy it is. I must have struck something hard. So, you know, on the... Yeah, I must have struck something with the shaft. Yes. Unleash your immature jokes. That's okay. So, yeah, that's what happened. As soon as this gets dented a little bit, it's much more likely to bend because this is essentially a hollow tube. And yeah, but anyway, it's, as you've seen, it still works. This is such an improvised, precarious situation here. But so far nothing has fallen over, so I guess I did it well. So here's the Arms and Armor Town Guard. That's a side sword, also called cut and thrust sword. Now these are modern terms, by the way. They didn't call them that in historical times. It was just, most of the time a sword was a sword. They just called it a sword. It's just only in later, you know, in modern times we had this need to classify and categorize better to make it easier to know exactly what you're talking about. The swept hilt and all these rings for protection of the hand, so it's somewhat similar to a rapier, but it's got a wider blade, of course, so it cuts better. It's not as long as a rapier either. This is easily one of the prettiest swords in this collection. There's just something very aesthetically pleasing about all these rings and the swept shape. Overall, the wire wrap is really nicely done. It looks great. It is super tight. It feels good. There's so much to like about this, the way it handles and everything. The edge came kind of butter knife dull, which I wasn't too happy about, but I'm not going to go into that again. I've talked about that in a number of videos, and it's up for debate. I mean, even historical swords, even the same type, didn't always have the same sharpness. And you know, there was variation, there was personal preference back then as well, not just today. I just found that I can cut a lot better with a sharper edge, and also it's more effective against cloth, for example. A very dull edge may not be able to penetrate cloth. So yeah, let's just leave it at that. So here is a long khukuri. It's called a Kobra. This particular model here, it's probably from Himalayan Imports. I don't know exactly for sure, because this is another one of the really, you know, oldies, if you will. They have been, this one has also been with us for a very long time. I've done a review of that one, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. It'll be in the video description again. Yeah, really neat. It's a massive, massive blade. Easily the thickest blade we have. And it packs one hell of a punch, so to speak, or a chop. You know what I mean. This is the Hanwei Baskethilt backsword. Backsword means that it's single-edged. You can see the spine here. The Baskethilt broadsword would be double-edged. This one is really light. It's got ray skin handle wrap inside. And yeah, pretty neat. Again, the edge is, well, quite frankly, terrible. I still need to spend quite a bit of time grinding this to do that properly. So I haven't really done much testing with it yet because of that. It just doesn't cut anything really. So I've still to get around to that. But I do like the overall design. Like having your hand wrapped in protective steel is kind of nice. It also just looks really neat. And the Warhammer, which we've also seen in recent armor tests. This one is made by Arms and Armor, older model. The current one they have at Cult of Athena is a little different. This one is really well made, nice and sturdy. I like how long the langets are, and this really makes it almost indestructible. There is a bit of a crack here in the wood, but it has no impact on its functionality. This has already been there when I got it, and you've seen some of the bashing I've done with this, and it's held up just fine. So it's also got this nice aged look to it. So the finish is somewhat rough, which I'm usually not a big fan of, but in this case it really works because for one, the wood is nice and dark, and the steel overall here is a little bit blackened here and there, and it's kind of more of a darker gray. This one you've probably also seen recently. That's the Thorpe falchion made by Angus Trim. Became almost instantly one of my favorites because of one, how well it handles, and also how it cuts. I mean, this thing is a beast. It cuts incredibly well. I've also brought it to a very fine edge, which by the way holds up really nicely. So durability is not a problem. The point was oddly thin when it came. In fact, it was bent from shipping, but that was really not so much improper packaging and really more the edge was needle thin. It was, or the blade rather, was needle thin. It was crazy. I don't know why this was tapered so extremely much, but I cut off a piece and ground it and made it a lot stronger, and now it's just fine. And yeah, this is an extremely nice one. If you can find one, I would highly suggest picking it up if you can afford it at the time. This is a great sword. Well, not an actual great sword, that's over there, but you know what I mean. This is a Chinese dao, a willow leaf saber made by Huanuo Forge, and really, really pretty one again. It's got a green handle wrap, bronze fittings. At least I think it's bronze. It definitely does not. It has more of a red tint compared to brass. I think it's bronze, but it could also be antique brass. I don't actually know for sure. Nice sharp edge, full flat grind, mirror polish. A pretty sword, and also one that performs quite nicely. Cuts really well. Yeah, again, these Albions I've covered in the other video. And I'll sneak out this axe. That one has made an appearance in quite a number of videos, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. Nice Dane axe, very thin blade. Really neat, nice and tall. So that would give you plenty of reach and even more power. I still need to grind the edge to make that just a little sharper, because as it is, it didn't perform as well as it really should. I still want to actually show you what these are capable of. Okay, I'll save the behemoth for last. So now we have this longsword here by Lockwood. This is the SL-1009, I think it was. Very pretty longsword. I've also shown that before. I very much like the black finish on the guard and the pommel. Very pretty handle as well. It also feels very good. And yeah, so this is really primarily a thrusting sword. I haven't actually tried cutting with it yet. I just don't have high hopes. For one, because of the the cross section. This is not very conducive to cutting because it's a relatively thick edge bevel, or rather a thick blade overall, because with this much taper you need it to be thick enough that it doesn't become too flexible, because in the thrust you don't want it to flop around all over the place. But yeah, very pretty and effective too for thrusting. Okay, so here is the Greatsword. This is the Lowlander by Hanwei. I can't possibly fit this in the frame. It is humongous. No, actually, wait, is it all in the frame? I can't see from here. It might be. So yes, this thing is ginormous. I've got some thick leather here on the ground, so I can just put it down. Yeah, it's tall. The unfortunate thing about this is it's not very sturdy. When I took this apart, the pommel is screwed on. So yes, you can end them rightly with this. But the problem is the tang there is rather thin and narrow. I wouldn't trust this to hold up under heavy use. So I haven't really done any, substantial testing with it. Also, this is really wobbly especially for a blade of that size and heft. It looks nice, it's cool, but I just really wish it was better made. That's all I can say. And then there's this medieval crossbow from Todd Stuff. Very nice piece of craftsmanship. Sorry about that, I've been talking for too long. So this is what I would consider a light crossbow. It does require a spanning device, but it's quote unquote only over 300 pounds, which is really not that much for a crossbow because of the short draw. But I've talked about that in another video. Again, that will be down below as well. And yeah, before I get throat cancer here, let's just leave it at that. So I hope you found this interesting to take a look at the entire collection of current keepers, minus some fantasy ones and stuff. So yes, next video will be coming tomorrow. And thanks for watching.